for Two, your podcast. So you can tell us a little bit about that.
So I do a lot of online teaching and I teach at seminars. And when I would work with a couple right in the room, people would always say to me, that was so helpful to see what you were saying to them because I could relate
Right.
to what their challenge was and to take these principles and to make them more kind of related to the day-to-day struggle. And so it just gave me the idea of like maybe a way to help people, it would be to actually show them my work with couples. And so we have people change their names and we distort their voices, but these are real couples grappling with challenges around kids, sex, money, or
Mm.
faith. And so people can, it's a subscription podcast, but people can listen in on my work.
Oh.
And people tell me all the time, this is so helpful. But one of the reason why the podcast is called Room for Two is it's a double entendre. I'm helping them deal with issues of sexuality, intimacy, and connection,
Mm.
but also that happy marriages make room for two. It's about bringing your differences together without squashing or suppressing or dominating, our kind of natural man inclination, our self, our egos
Mm-hmm.
are often struggle to be true to ourselves and still love another. And so oftentimes we'll either compromise ourselves too much or we'll try to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do I actually operate in a way that you thrive and I thrive?
Mm.
And that requires soul development. That requires growth in our capacity to love. And I think marriage or committed relationships really push the development of that. When we're in community, when we're in connection,
Mm-hmm.
then we have to learn how to work and cooperate and be fair and consider our impact on another person, but also stand up for ourselves when necessary,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't just, feel like we're disappearing in our own life. And so it's helping people to build the skills to be able to do that better in their lives.
I think even to know that's possible, but to become even aware that
Yes.
what's really at play and how I
Yes.
know for Craig and me, my husband and I, like the more aware we become, the more we
Yeah.
realize, oh my gosh, there's so
Yeah.
much that in terms of conditioning and programming and
Yeah.
ways of showing up in relationship and how one deals with conflict and one deals with hard conversations and one thinks about whatever it is. It's like, and faith and but
Yes.
there's such a myriad of things that
Yeah.
come up, and the awareness, Jennifer, for us around how much even our relationship has impacted our children
Mm.
in a, I think, in a really good way, and then
Mm.
in a not so good way. And for us to hold that in a way, like our oldest two would be okay in saying, so we have four young adult children, but
Mm.
our oldest two have been tremendous teachers for us in terms of doing their own work
Mm.
and coming back around and saying things that have really brought attention to this. And also, it's
Mm-hmm.
so tender because the process requires this ability to say, I believe you, I hear you, you're right in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what your experience was,
Yeah.
and this sense of, I had no idea that
Yeah, sure.
this was so, yeah,
Hard.
I didn't know how
Yeah.
unhealthy that dynamic was.
Yeah.
So I don't know your thoughts to that, but I
Yeah.
just think it's a real thing that we don't know how, the less conscious we are and the more we do these things in terms of relationally how we're showing
Yeah.
up and some of our codependent
Yeah.
do you find codependency to be something that you work with and address?
Yeah. Yeah. I tend to use a little bit different language than codependent, but
What do you
it's the same
use
idea of enmeshment,
in that? Yeah,
enmeshment or
yeah.
the ways that psychologically we borrow functioning from one another. And I would say that like that doesn't mean you guys were defective as parents or a couple. It just means you guys did what every human does. Because you don't learn, the way you learn to be a parent is by being a parent. The way you learn to be married is by getting married. You're trying to keep food on the table and diapers on the kids and keeping them safe and you're and we're usually truly trying, most are truly trying to do a good job and working from whatever frame they internalized and in the dynamic that is playing itself out naturally in the couple most easily. Like introverts tend to marry extroverts, and more mission driven people tend to marry more accommodating people. And then, of course, those things show up in the dynamics at home, and then how the kids receive those dynamics, and then how they bring their own dispositions, right? And their own strengths and limitations to those dynamics. And so, I know in my own life, there were moments where I was like, oh my gosh, I just didn't track that, or I didn't understand that that was having that effect.
Right.
I didn't even think about that idea.
Right.
And yet this child is saying that was hard for me. So I think that that's just so much what it is to love.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the parent that loves is open to the conversation, is open to understanding, is open to considering if they're having a negative impact, right, on their child or their adult child. And so, when we love, it's that we're willing to be in true conversation, to understand and see ourselves through the lens of another's experience, to self-correct, to try to do a little better, and we're still going to be imperfect, right? We're still going to, I remember going off to college and going to see a therapist at the counseling center and starting to process some of my early experience, and then coming home at Christmas and having more honest conversations with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I know I would say that they were painful for my dad in particular, that I had felt like I had sort of protected him from my
Mm-hmm.
anger, and I was talking more openly with him about my experience. And I just remember him sobbing, actually,
Mm-hmm.
but not poor me sobbing, like I want, like what I could see is his love, his real desire to do what was good, and his regret that it had a negative impact. And watching my father really try. I mean, it's that my father didn't like become a new person or something, but that for me was everything.
Mm-hmm.
That I care about you, that I'm willing to consider your experience, and I'm willing to do a little better. And I think that's what I think
Mm-hmm.
is true for all of us, is am I willing to keep growing and keep learning and keep trying for the benefit of our relationships?
And I wonder too, Jennifer, that there are parents who were not and are not able to hold that, and who aren't maybe as ready to take that in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think there is fear and probably concern for
Mm-hmm.
especially young adults who just don't want to upset the balance,
Mm-hmm.
or just know that's not going to go well, or have no interest in exploring that because they don't think it's going to be received.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
and yet that work is still there. It's still alive and well in terms of that separation, individuation, and that sense of
Mm-hmm.
being in relationship with someone who thinks differently, behaves differently.
Mm-hmm.
But I say this because I think it's an important conversation, and it's one that we want to honor where our parents are, and we also want to honor ourselves, and then figure out
Yeah.
how do we explore this, whether it's with them or on our.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting
Yes.
stance
Right.
to consider.
Yeah, 100%. And, when you're with people that are willing to be honest with themselves, when they're willing to say, I could have done better, I'm sorry, or that's such a gift. It's a real strength. It's a real act of love, and not something to be taken for granted. And then if you're with someone who won't do that,
Mhm.
or if you yourself won't do that, because sometimes we're less
Not
aware of
so
our own
convenient,
struggle with
or
that.
right, right.
Yeah, and more aware of other people's struggle. But let's say you're with someone who won't acknowledge. I mean, then the question of what does it mean to love in this situation? What does it mean to do what will be good, given that I can't control them? That's maybe a harder question, but still an important one.
I think it's a very important question because
Hmm.
ultimately we can't control others, and we're not here to do so. But we
Right.
are in terms of that self-authorship. That is
Right.
our responsibility, and it's our
Right.
agency. Like I think it's such a powerful brew for young adults to step into choice and to really know that they are the creators of their lives in terms of their experience of their lives. There's a lot of things that have happened to them or will happen that they can't control, and that
Right.
includes other people, but how they show up for it is
Yeah.
everything. It's such an empowering way to.
Yes, it really is. I think sometimes we get too focused on the negative impact that others have on us. And, yes, people
Mhm,
can do things that are unjust or can really hurt
mhm.
or can be really unfair.
Yeah.
But I also think that is true. And that's always going to be true. That
Mhm,
the more we can claim who we are, how we respond, how we act, what we choose, it's tremendously powerful. It shapes those relationships. And at a minimum, it shapes our own soul, it shapes our own well being.
mhm,
Sometimes I've said to myself, at a minimum, what do I need to do to respect myself at the end of this conversation, at the end of this interaction? I can't control anything else here, but I can control that. So, how do I need to behave? And it gets me focused in the direction of what I actually have power over.
mhm, mhm. Get you back into the power seat in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's not as much powerlessness in that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in general, it's a very holy walk to be human,
Mm.
and
Yeah. Gosh.
to touch on the various things that we've talked about today. I think there's a lot to continue for my people to unpack and for me to continue in walking with each and every person who I work with to say, this is what it is. And it
Mm.
continues. It's not a one and done. It's like an evolution of, it's a
Mm.
journey, I think is what I would say, is this
Yes.
being human.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
It is a journey and it never
Mm.
ends. And how lucky we are to be here and
Yeah.
to not lose the magic of that, because I think the heaviness and the hard and the pain and the scary things going on can
Yeah.
obfuscate that. But there's such magic also in, and I think the love piece is, if we keep that front and center, I think, and
Yeah.
following our joy and what we're good at,
Yes.
and doing good in the world.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
so to wrap up today, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think would be good for my our listeners to hear?
Yeah. Well, I think, Marta, you were largely just saying it, but that, yeah, life is not easy, but it's a huge privilege. And if somebody had said to me a few decades ago, love is the answer, I'd kind of like secretly roll my eyes a little bit like, okay,
Right,
like,
right.
just
I
like,
so
okay, yeah, but
agree.
we need a lot more answers than
Right,
just love,
right.
like it would seem just kind of cliche, but then you get a little older and you're like, dang it,
It
like
really
that's
is.
actually true.
Well, it's multifaceted. Like love is
Yeah.
it's not unilaterally like one thing. It
Right.
encompasses so much. Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to be nice no matter what, that's maybe how I would have taken it.
Right.
Where love is really this power of what is good,
Hmm.
and that it really is powerful. When we can lean into the courage to be truthful, to be fair, to try to create a world that's better for others, even when there's a lot of fear.
Hmm.
That's where we find what our soul needs.
Hmm.
Still very flawed. There's a lot of loss and suffering in the world, but that is the thing we can trust.
Hmm.
So I think that's real. And my experience shows me that when I've worked with so many people up against these moral choices. And so it's easier to talk about it than to do it because it takes a lot of courage. But I do really think it's what the world needs and it's what our souls need. And we can shape that in wherever we're planted. We can shape how much good and how much love there is there.
It's so beautiful. I almost have to ask one more thing because I didn't, and I really would kick myself if I didn't
Mm,
ask this around differentiation. And
mm,
I think it ties into everything you were just saying, but even
mm.
for my listeners to hear what that is and how that plays
Yeah.
to the belonging piece and also the
Yeah.
that sense of separateness. And
Yeah, well, differentiation, so to be brief about it, it's an idea that Murray Bowen articulated in his work with families, and it's what a lot of developmental theorists have pointed to in the process of our maturation, whether that's our spiritual development, our ego development, our moral development. And that is that we go from a kind of enmeshed or undifferentiated sense of self, where our sense of self is deeply connected to how others feel about us
mm,
and how others interact with us. I can't feel good about me unless you feel good about me.
mhm,
It's where we kind of learn the culture and the realities that our family embodies, that we're very psychologically entangled, right? And that's how we must start out. That is the way that our development begins. But to differentiate is to get more and more able to kind of differentiate ourselves from our group. Now, it's not a rejection of our group, but
mhm,
more the question of who am I within this group? What
mhm.
are my unique gifts? I
Yeah.
think the body of Christ metaphor in the New Testament is a metaphor of differentiation. We're all connected, like we belong,
Mhm,
but we need to be true to who we are as individuals in that larger body of belonging.
mhm.
And it's really like when it's saying, you can't say to the knee, I can't remember now, but I have no need of thee, like, or that you wish that you were the mouth if you were in fact the hand, right? It's that we are all in maybe different places with different gifts, but the more we can claim them and live them well together
Yeah.
and accept those differences, the
Mhm,
more that we thrive in the body.
mhm.
And I think that's a metaphor of differentiation. I can be connected to you, but also true to myself.
And
That's what
being
marriage
yourself very
pushes us
well.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Hmm.
love that. Being
Hmm.
whole,
Yeah.
separate. Yeah. And
Yeah.
together. Yeah. I love that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank
So
you.
before we wrap up, I'd love to share how can people continue learning from you?
Yeah, if you go to my website, which is my last name, and that's Finlayson-Fife.com. So,
We'll put that in
um,
the show notes.
yeah. So on the website, there is the Conversations with Dr. Jennifer podcast, which is all free content. Room for Two, which is my conversations with couples, several online courses for how to develop a more intimate marriage and more peace with your sexuality,
Mhm.
and then my book, That We Might Have Joy.
I'm going to have to get my hands on that one.
Yeah.
Thank you from the
Yeah.
bottom of my heart. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And this is the practice of being human. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Marta.
Thank you.